Hey there, HorseCenter fans. Matt and I are back with another exciting edition of the show. Matt, this week on HorseCenter, we are getting down and Breeders Cup.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, it's October, and that's what we should be talking about, getting ready and thinking about the Breeders' Cup, which is less than 2 months away.
7 weeks, Matt. Breeders Cup Classic, Breeders Cup Distaff, they're both looking good at this point. We're also going to talk a little Woodbine Mile. Watch it all right now on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the excellent pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I am excellent, Brian, and it's October, so I think it's time that we should put some attention on the Breeders' Cup.
I'm with you, Matt. Let's focus on the two biggies, at least the way they're looking now. The two biggies we see are the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Breeders' Cup Distaff. A lot of good horses are pointing for both right now, 7 weeks out. Matt, you want to start Classic, the $7 million Breeders' Cup Classic?
Let's go with that. That's the big one.
All right. Well, I think we got to start with last year's 3-year-old champion, Matt. Maximum Security, for all his troubles, whether it be stewards in Kentucky, whether it be placed in low claiming to start his career, whether it be trainers getting arrested by the feds, long layoff after going to Saudi Arabia. He just keeps going, Matt. Maximum Security, 2 for 2 since that big win in the Saudi Cup. Looked awfully good winning the Pacific Classic last time.
He sure did, Brian. On the move to the barn of Bob Baffert, after the arrests that you mentioned, he's 2 for 2. Certainly showing the reason that Maximum Security has won or crossed the finish line in first in almost every one of his races. That determination down the stretch to win.
Yeah, determination down the stretch. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Matt. And it strikes me that the horse I have listed on top of the Breeders' Cup Classic list right now and the horse I have on the Breeders' Cup Distaff list right now, they've had one horse ever finish ahead of them in all their races. So awfully impressive, and that's why they're number one on their respective lists. Of course, the other one I'm talking about is Monomoy Girl. We're going to talk about her in a little bit, but Maximum Security looks good. He looked good in the Pacific Classic. The San Diego was a bit of a tough race, but I don't think that race set up for him very well, and it was a long layoff. He improved in the Pacific Classic. It was rather easy. I do see some speed lining up for the Breeders' Cup Classic. He did not run in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year. He's never run at Keeneland. I mean, there are plenty of reasons to think that he's beatable, but until further notice, I think he deserves to be the favorite in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, without question. And you mentioned he hasn't run in Keeneland. I'm not concerned about that because he's taken his race with him all over the world. So a new racetrack, I don't think that bothers me at all.
How about the 1.25 miles?
I don't think so, Brian. He is he's shown the versatility handling all distances. He did the 1.25 miles in the Pacific Classic, and if it is a race that has speed in it, I don't think that is a negative either. He'll likely sit a stalking pace, and they're going to have to hold him off down the stretch.
Yeah, in fact, I think the 1.25 miles might actually be good for Maximum Security. I'm not saying that's his best distance necessarily, but on the other hand, as other horses start to get just a little tired, Maximum Security reaches down into his intestinal fortitude, Matt, and it only gets tougher to catch him when they run farther. It sure looks like so far in his career. Next horse on the list is the horse I've been touting. Maybe touting's the wrong word, but he's kind of been number one on my personal Breeders' Cup Classic list all year long. I just think he, for whatever reason, the minor injuries, lightly raced, he never was able to show his true stuff until last fall. He did. And this year, I really liked what I saw. Tom State Todd is the horse I'm talking about, and I thought he was very unlucky in his only loss this year, which came last time in the Whitney.
Yeah, he was on a roll heading into the Whitney. He had 4 wins in a row, all of them impressive in running in different ways in those victories. And like you said, a lot of people feel like things just didn't go his way. He didn't get out of the gate well. The pace was against him. 2 big factors in the Whitney, where another horse that we'll mention on our classic list ran a big one. It is worth noting that Tom's d'Etat, over all of these years as a 7-year-old, has never run in the Breeders' Classic, the Breeders' Cup at all, let alone the Breeders' Cup Classic. He does have a win in his past performances at Keeneland, though.
Yeah, of course, he won last year's Fayette, which was on an off track, but it looks like he does like Keeneland. And I think you hit on another good point there, Matt. I think he's a horse that can win from different places in the racetrack. He can be right there on the lead, near the lead, or he can be a little bit farther off, as we've seen this year, what he did. So in the Whitney, you might be saying, well, why are they saying the pace was against him when he's a horse who can do anything? Well, that really bad break out of the starting gate was what cost him, because he felt well behind the field, and then that slow pace did him absolutely no favors. I think Tom's d'Etat, still, if I had to pick one horse, it's a slight favoritism. But if I had to pick one horse to win the Breeders' Cup Classic right now, I'm sticking with Tom's d'Etat. Although 'tis the law, Matt, 'tis the law. You throw out those Churchill races, 2 races at Churchill. Granted, they were a pretty big race and then a very big race, but he looks awfully good away from Churchill Downs. Is that why he lost the Kentucky Derby? Is that why he was second best in the Kentucky Derby, because of the track? It might be.
Well, certainly that's the party line that's coming out of the Barkley Tag Barn from Barkley himself and from his assistant Robin Smullen. They're saying, and she recently reiterated it, that that Churchill Downs surface really isn't to 'tis the law's liking, and he came out of the Derby a tired horse and is still taking his time to get back to 100% and get into full training. So I think in this particular case, he doesn't like Churchill Downs, and that's a valid excuse for those two losses. But however, I do like to see a horse that can run on other surfaces, and with 'tis the law, all of his other races have been at either Belmont Park or at Saratoga.
Or Gulfstream Park. Three
Yes.
Grade 1 wins in a row at 3 different tracks. So I'm not ready to say 'tis the law needs his racetrack, because he was so impressive in the Florida Derby, the Belmont, and the Travers. And I'll take that a step farther, Matt. Was any horse more impressive this year on the racetrack than 'tis the law was in the Travers? So 'tis the law, a 3-year-old. He hasn't run against Alders, but I still think he's a big threat when we talk Breeders' Cup Classic. And I do, in my heart, if not my head, feel that he's a little bit better than he showed in the Kentucky Derby. Whether he runs in the Preakness in between the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic is still pending. Matt and I talked a little bit about it already. Maybe the owners want to run. Maybe the trainers want to wait. We'll see. But 'tis the law has to be considered a big threat. If you just look at the Travers, a big threat for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Then you got the Derby winner, Matt. Now, we were famously not on the Derby winner in the Churchill Downs that day, but he ran a big race, wire to wire, outside post. I wasn't crazy. I know there's an excuse in the Santa Anita Derby, and I know Mike Smith had some excuses in the Haskell, but I wasn't crazy for the Santa Anita Derby nor the Haskell. But then he ran his best race in the Kentucky Derby. Interesting to me, there's other speed in the field, and there's other speed from the barn of Bob Baffert. Part of me wonders, will Authentic run in the Preakness and the Breeders' Cup Classic? But if he wins the Preakness like he did the Kentucky Derby, it would be awfully hard to keep him out of the Breeders' Cup Classic, right?
You would think, because with a Derby win and a Preakness win, that may be enough to give him the 3-year-old title, but would make him a legitimate contender for Horse of the Year if he went in the Classic and if he was able to do that. And you're mentioning Baffert. on the list that we're going to go through, there's going to be 3 Bob Baffert horses in this field, which is kind of unusual because Brian Baffert's won the Breeders' Cup Classic 3 times in his career. And Brian, you know what all 3 of those victories have in common?
Not offhand, Matt.
Well, they were won in 3 consecutive years, and they were all won with 3-year-olds.
There you go. And Authentic is the only 3-year-old on the list for the Bob Baffert barn. I will say, as far as the 3-year-old championship is concerned, Authentic can sure take a clear lead if he wins the Preakness, whether Tiz the Law's in there or not. But if Tiz the Law were to win the Breeders' Cup Classic, I think that would tip the scales back in the favor of Tiz the Law. Okay, the next horse on the list, Matt, is the 3rd Bob Baffert, and Improbable, remember, was the favorite in the 2019 Kentucky Derby and the 2019 Preakness last year. He didn't do great, honestly, in either, but he was the favorite in both of those races. People saw his talent going into last year's Triple Crown. Last year was kind of a disappointing year for Improbable. 2020 has been different, whether it was that loss to Tom's d'Etat where he opened up early in the lane and then got nailed late, or his 2 return wins in the Hollywood Gold Cup and the Whitney. Improbable has been a better, stronger horse as a 4-year-old.
Yeah, certainly. Age has been a key for Improbable, as now Baffert has him in the absolutely best form of his career. You mentioned that narrow loss to Tom's d'Etat where he raced from way outside, and then that was followed with a nice win in the Hollywood Gold Cup and an even better win against an even much better field in the Whitney at Saratoga. Again, proven that he can take his game on the road. So a trip to Keeneland for Improbable makes him an interesting horse in the Classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Improbable has gotten very good this year for sure. And I tell you what, of those 3 Bob Bafferts, 3 horses that you'd have to put up high on the list, as we did for the Breeders' Cup Classic, I would give the slight edge to Maximum Security of those 3 Bafferts. But it's hard to say anything negative about Authentic and Improbable the way they've looked lately. So Baffert has a strong hand, I guess, is what we're saying. And Improbable is a strong shot in the Breeders' Cup Classic for Baffert, even if it's his 3rd string. I don't know if you can call Improbable 3rd string, but maybe in the world of Bob Baffert, he is a 3rd stringer. All right, the horse he beat in the Whitney, Matt, is very interesting to me by my standards. I think he's the longest shot of the horses we've talked about so far in highlighting the horses we think are the horses to beat for the Breeders' Cup Classic this year. I think of the 6 horses we've mentioned now, he's the 6th choice. But on the other hand, he's done a lot this year. He's got 4 impressive wins, including the Alashiba last time. He's run 2nd in both the Whitney to Improbable and the Foster to Tom's d'Etat. But I look at that record, 4 for 6 with 2 seconds, really good record. But I look at the jockey and I see Gabriel Saez was on board for all 4 wins, wasn't on board for either of the 2 losses. You know, there are other reasons for the wins and the losses, but I think there's something to that jockey horse connection, and Saez has had him sitting in 2nd in all 4 of those wins.
Yeah, you certainly have to assume that jockey horse connection that those 2 have, they just fit together so well. But regardless of that, by my standards, is absolutely the Rodney Dangerfield of this field. He just keeps running good races after good races after good races, and here you are again, Brian, saying that in this classic field, which is shaping up to be a very strong one, he's likely to be the 6th choice or so.
He can't get no respect, man. And he deserves it, but he can't get no respect. All right, one more horse on our Breeders' Cup Classic big boys on the big sign, on the big list, Matt. We stopped at 7. We had to put Art Collector in there because Art Collector was so impressive, winning an allowance at Churchill Downs, the Bluegrass at Keeneland, and the Ellis Park Derby before a very minor injury kept him out of the Kentucky Derby. It looks like full steam ahead for Art Collector in the Preakness, where he'll have a big shot against Authentic or maybe Tiz the Law as well. I think we have to talk about Art Collector, especially off that big win at Keeneland in the Bluegrass.
Yeah, Brian, that was absolutely the biggest and best race of his career. That score in the Bluegrass over a Swiss Skydiver. Hey, the Preakness is going to be a proving ground, a big test for Art Collector. I was big on him heading into the Derby, and like you said, he missed the Derby. It was a very minor. He grabbed some skin on the back of one of his hooves, but being so close to the Derby, any medication that they needed to put on there to fight off infection and help the healing would have pushed him with a drug positive. So they had to scratch him. So I think he's going to be back in the Preakness at full strength, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, I think he'll be in the Preakness at full strength, Matt. I think he has a real shot in the Preakness. And if you look back at that Bluegrass, Swiss Skydiver, and Rushy, second and third place, Art Collector surely was better than those two that day at Keeneland, and they've come back and done awfully well since then. All right, there's others on this Breeders' Cup Classic, but we just wanted to list our top 7 right now for the early preview. In the distaff, we're only going 6 deep, Matt, half a dozen females. We've got to start with Monomoy Girl. Like Maximum Security, I said she's only had one horse ever finish ahead of her at the wire, and that was a long time ago, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that was early on in her career. Of course, she crossed the finish line in first in the Cotillion at Parks last year, but was disqualified. But like you said, she just keeps winning and has overcome some ailments and some serious medical conditions to come back this year, and seems as good or maybe better than ever. 3 for 3 with big wins in the La Troyenne at Churchill Downs most recently.
Yeah, and the Ruffian at Belmont before that, I thought she beat a decent allowance field on a return after a year and a half off. Matt, she's just a winner, and she might not have had the turmoil that the career of Maximum Security has, but both of these horses just don't want to let horses pass them in the stretch. Monomoy Girl may not be, and it's kind of like Maximum Security as well, may not be the type of horse who wins by 8-10 lengths, but she just knows how to win, and it's continued after that long layoff. Now we got to talk about the rivalry, because there was a real rivalry back when they were 3-year-olds with Midnight Basoo. Everyone assumed Midnight Basoo, who was the champion older mare last year, had passed Monomoy Girl by in the time off, and now we're starting to think, well, that might not be true, because Monomoy Girl did finish ahead of her in all 4 of their meetings, although once, as you mentioned, she was taken down in the Cotillion. Still, Midnight Basoo is a experienced 5-year-old who really never left the track for any long stretch. She's only won 1 of her last 4, which is strange, but that Saudi Cup was such a big performance. She was upset last time at Saratoga, but I wouldn't hold that too much against her. I expect her to come back really good, and I'm excited, frankly, to see the rivalry renewed after a full 2-year break.
Oh yeah, absolutely looking forward to them getting together on the racetrack again. You mentioned the difference in campaigns, and I don't know if I should say that I'm concerned a little bit, but it certainly is different that Midnight Basoo has run only 3 times this year, and at this same point on the calendar last year, Midnight Basoo had run 6 times. Now, okay, yeah, some of that is certainly due to the fact that her first race of this year was over in Saudi Arabia when she ran second, a gallant second behind Maximum Security, and she got a good bit of time off after that race. She came back and won the Fleur-de-Lis, but then, as you mentioned, was upset in the personal ensign. I don't know if the light campaign is a reason to be concerned, but it's in my head.
Yeah, and I think you can just mark that down to the reason that you said, and that's a long trip to the Saudi Cup where she ran such a big race. Certainly her return race in the Fleur-de-Lis was huge, and I think for whatever reason she did not run her best last time, but I expect Midnight Basoo to be a strong challenger in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Monomoy Girl, Midnight Pursuit, they are going to get a lot of talk, and maybe some of the 3-year-olds will as well. But I think there's some interesting older fillies in here that we need to talk about. Dunbar Road was obviously a talented filly when she won races like the Mother Goose and the Alabama last year. Things did not quite work out for her well as a 3-year-old going out to California for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She didn't run terrible, but it was not her best race. This year, she's been awfully good, as is Chad Brown's style. He doesn't race his top horses a ton and gets them really pointing for the big races. Looks like she'll have one more prep, which will only be her 3rd race of the year. But an improved Dunbar Road as a 4-year-old, as opposed to where she was last year's 3, I think is a real threat in the Breeders' Cup Distaff.
Yeah, as Chad Brown horses are, he has already in his young training career won so many Breeders' Cup races. Dunbar Road's 2 for 2, came back and won a minor stake at Churchill Downs, and followed that up with a win in the Delaware Handicap Grade 2 against not the strongest field around.
Yeah, she was very impressive in both of those wins. But of course, yes, the competition will get tougher. But I think Dunbar Road could be one getting that good where she is a real challenger to the top 2. Then you got Fighting Mad, and Fighting Mad has done a lot of sprinting in her career out in California mostly. And it's kind of strange because the one time she stretched out to a mile at 3, she won for fun. And then her last 2 races, she stretched out again to 2 turns on California, and she beat the best older females on the dirt out in California. Fighting Mad, Matt, is 3 for 3 at a mile or more.
Yeah, a big win in the Santa Maria, a Grade 2 in California, and then the Clement Hirsch, a Grade 1. In Clement Hirsch beat some very nice horses like Ollie's Candy and Tsitsi. And of course, Brian, same connections, same silks, same trainer as Maximum Security.
I'll take that one step farther, Matt. Same sire, New Year's Day. So I'm not sure why Fighting Mad was sprint so much, but she clearly likes 2 turns, and speed is dangerous, as it always is. Speaking of speed, let's talk some Swiss Skydiver. She was taken off the lead a bit to my surprise in the Kentucky Oaks, and then she rallied on the outside from her stalking position. Came up a little short, but she ran another big race. Matt, they're deciding whether to run in the Preakness or possibly a Keeneland race as a prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff.
Another big race is a perfect way to say it, Brian, because, hey, she's had an extensive campaign all over the country, many different racetracks, and every single time she brings the stuff. She battles down the wire, running, again, showing different running styles. And now they're considering going after the boys again in the Preakness. Hey, I don't think you can ever discount that Kenny McPeak trainee.
No, you can't discount Swiss Skydiver. I probably misspoke when I said the Preakness could be a prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff, because the Preakness is not a prep for anything. The Preakness is a huge race. But it would be interesting if they go Preakness, Breeders' Cup Distaff. My guess is they go Keeneland with one of those races, the Spinster or the QE2 Challenge Cup on the grass, as her prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. But oodles and oodles of respect for Swiss Skydiver. Well-deserved. Another good effort in the Kentucky Oaks, even if she finished second. Much like her Bluegrass, a big performance. She's won the other ones this year, at least her last 6 races. She's won 4 graded stakes in very impressive fashion, besides those 2 good second places. She is the 3-year-old filly champion still, even though the filly that beat her in the Kentucky Oaks, She Dares the Devil, also makes our list, Matt. And I think She Dares the Devil is a up-and-comer, if you will. I mean, she won the Kentucky Oaks. Yeah, she's right up there in the race for 3-year-old filly championship, but she was much lesser known going into the Kentucky Oaks, but now she's run 3 straight big winning races in a row, and maybe she's gotten this good.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And like you said, a much more lightly raced filly than Swiss Skydiver. She Dares the Devil got the win in the Oaks, but I want to see her come back and win another race and continue to run big, and that may happen. She her past performances show a horse that's getting better and better from the barn of Brad Cox, and hey, he's the trainer of Monomoy Girl, and he knows how to keep these fillies going. But we'll see. I think she needs to show us a big race like that again.
All right, folks, that's 7 for the Classic, 6 for the Distaff. You can see why Matt and I are excited 7 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup. These races are looking really good on paper right now. Hope you enjoyed our early preview. We want to take a look at the biggest race this weekend too, Matt, which is up north of the border, up at Woodbine in suburban Toronto. Matt, we got a wow factor in the Woodbine Mile because the morning line favorite is War of Will, WOW, wow.
Yes, that's for sure. The $1 million purse in the Woodbine Mile, which is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Mile, one of the glamour races on the Saturday card at the Breeders' Cup, and War of Will is making the transition from dirt to turf, and he looked awfully good doing it when he won the Maker's Mile Grade 1 during the summer.
Yeah, a couple months ago, but it was a very game performance to get that Grade 1 victory on turf, to join his Grade 1 victory, of course, the Preakness last year on dirt. Really nice horse. I'm not sure if he's better on turf or dirt still, frankly, but I think a mile is probably a really good distance for War of Will, so I can see why they're pushing forward. First, they wanted to get a Grade 1 win on the other surface. Now it looks like they're pushing forward to the Breeders' Cup Mile. The Woodbine Mile is a perfect place to prep, as Cassie has done before. I don't think this is the strongest edition of the Woodbine Mile ever, but it's a nice field, and he's got a couple of his stablemates in there, and March to the Arch has a really nice win and a really nice record over the surface. And then you got the filly Starship Jubilee. I guess she's not a filly anymore at 7 years old. The mare Starship Jubilee, she's won a lot of races at Woodbine. She's won a bunch of races this year.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. It's not the strongest Woodbine Mile field. I think the travel restrictions from the pandemic have kept the Europeans away from the race, from this Woodbine Mile and the $1 million purse. But it certainly is an interesting field. Cassie's got 3 in there, and he's always dangerous at Woodbine. Brian, I was maybe a little surprised and am very interested in the fact that Cheryl Spite has shown up, the 3-year-old, in the Woodbine Mile. Folks, right, we talked about this horse heading into the Kentucky Derby. This horse was probably the buzz horse heading into the Run for the Roses, with those 2 very impressive victories at Woodbine in his brief career, one on the synthetic, one on the turf up there. And now Hall of Fame trainer Roger Atfield says, we're not going to go to the Preakness. How about we try this Woodbine Mile? I'm interested.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disclose the Preakness yet, Matt. The Preakness is 3 weeks after the Woodbine Mile. I could certainly see them running in both. And Roger Atfield, I have as much respect for Roger Atfield as about any North American trainer going right now. He's been around for a long time. He's trained a lot of really, really good horses over the years, won a lot of big races. And for him to be putting Cheryl Spate in these races that are so big after so little experience tells me a lot about how he feels about this horse. He had a cough. He couldn't run in the Kentucky Derby. His workouts have just been really sensational, for lack of a better word. Sensational is what I'm going to say with his workouts since his last win in the Marine, as was his debut performance on the turf, Matt. And I think these older horses, War Will might get a slight edge. March to the Arch, Starship Jubilee, Brown's got a lightly raced 4-year-old value proposition that you have to consider. But I think these 4-year-olds are good older horses, but they're not great older horses. And pardon me for War Will fans out there, they're not the probable horses that are going to win the Breeders' Cup Mile in my mind in 7 weeks. I think Cheryl Spate has a big chance in here. He's listed at 8-1 on the morning line. I think he's that good. I think he's that talented. He's the son of Speightstown and Perfect Cheryl, who was a top class female turfer out of Lady Shirl, another one. So that female family of Shirl Spade is amazing. I think he's this talented, and I think a mile on the turf might be a much easier spot at home than the Derby would have been for this one. So I'm going to take a shot at the a 3-year-old with only 2 races trained by Roger Outfield. Shirl Spade for me in the Woodbine Mile. I think he'll run a big race, whether that's a winning race or not, we'll see.
I have to agree with you, Brian. One of the reasons is that, if you take a look at the morning line odds, War of Will 2-1, Cassie's other horse, March to Arch, 5-2, Starship Jubilee 4-1. They've all earned those morning line odds with their recent form, and Shirl Spite at 8-1. I don't know, Brian. I'm not sure what to think. Part of me thinks that he's going to get bet down much lower than 8-1. But then again, we're talking about Cassie, and they love Cassie in Canada, and the horses are in good form. You got the Chad Brown horse in there, so it'll be interesting to see how the odds play out. But I will also go for Shirl Spite, especially if his odds stay up around 8-1.
Yeah, there's 4 horses above him to bet, so you might be getting something like that. But I too could see him being a little bit lower than 8-1. That's how impressive he was in his first 2 starts, Matt. All right, we did a lot. We did Breeders' Cup Classic early preview, Breeders' Cup Distaff early preview, a look at the Woodbine Mile on Saturday at Woodbine, Matt. Let's get a parting shot from you today.
Yeah, hey, wow, we were all over the place this week, Brian, but that's okay. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Keep the comments. There's been an interesting lot of comments on YouTube and at Horse Racing Nation about our HorseCenter show. So keep watching, keep commenting. We appreciate it. And of course, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman, for putting together the show.
Yeah, thanks to Brett. Thanks to all you for watching every week. We sure do appreciate it. Matt and I enjoy talking horses with you. If you haven't yet hit our subscribe button here at the YouTube channel, Horse Racing Nation, please do that for us. We appreciate it. We also appreciate our sponsor, the best contest site out there. That's Derby Wars. Folks, we'll be back next week with another big show on HorseCenter. We'll see you then.